Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our event today, My Body is My Own. Dr. Kanem, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
All right, you may go.
Distinguished delegates, partners, and friends, bienvenue. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you for My Body is My Own, an intergenerational dialogue regarding young women and adolescent girls' bodily autonomy. And I heartily thank Sweden, the Youth Coalition on Sexual and Reproductive Rights, the Center for Reproductive Rights, and Plan International for co-leading this conversation today. Bodily autonomy, it's a concept that has often been taboo, unspoken, even in the most progressive societies. The first step to realizing bodily autonomy is articulating and affirming the concept itself. And that is exactly what we're doing today by having a conversation about this. Ultimately, bodily autonomy is about freedom and it's about power. Gender equality is about power and freedom and the agency to make choices over our bodies and our futures, free from violence, free from coercion. It sounds simple, right? And yet, sadly, for a staggering number of young women and girls around the world, this fundamental right is elusive. Somewhere today, an adolescent girl woke up to discover she is expected to undergo a rite of passage, forever to be wounded by female genital mutilation. Somewhere else, a girl learns that you're 13 years old today and it's going to be your wedding day. And another girl is embarrassed when her menstrual period starts at school and there are no hygiene supplies for her. And a young married woman, having walked to the clinic in her village, is told no contraception because your husband is not here to sign the paper. When I was in Yemen a couple of weeks ago, I met with young girls who had had to flee their homes and seek protection in UNFPA-run shelters. And a girl that I met, she's called Alia, really struck me because she had been married off at age 13 to a 30-year-old man. And when she tried to escape, her father sent her back, saying, "This is going to give you a better life." However, what she told me was, "My life only got worse." Her story is not unique, and I hear it time and time again, because every single day on this planet, 33,000 girls are married off against their will young. And in this year alone, there'll be over 4 million girls at risk of female genital mutilation. These are women and girls, these are adolescents and children, really, at the age of 10, 12, 13, who cannot proudly say, "My body is my own. I'm the owner of my future." Their lives are governed by others. So, one statistic from UNFPA that also really strikes me, nearly half of women around the world cannot make the most basic decision about whether or not to have sex with their partner, about whether or not to use contraception. And they cannot decide for themselves to leave the house and go and see the doctor or the nurse. There are many marginalized women and girls who are unaware that they even have these rights to be able to make choices over their own bodies and what happens to them in the future. So, dear partners, dear friends, what I'd like to stress is that the persistent barriers that prevent young people, and specifically adolescent girls and young women, from exercising their bodily autonomy are because of gender stereotypes. Since the time of Methuselah, the stereotyping of women and girls as inferior because of smaller bodily size has been inherent in society. And what we need to do to overcome this is to shift our mindset completely. And these deeply rooted social and gender stereotypes can change. And it's really up to us to take action to do something about this. It requires laws that enable rather than constrain human rights. It requires us to put women and youth led organizations in the driver's seat, and young feminist leaders, indeed, as we saw in Generation Equality Forum, are taking their seat at the forefront of these efforts to drive social change. And we can finally envision a time, hopefully by 2030, when bodily autonomy becomes a reality for all. It's important. It's important because bodily autonomy underpins all of human rights and all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and the benefits pay off in so many directions. As a co leader of the Generation Equality Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, UNFPA is championing access to contraception and to information that is life saving for young people, comprehensive sexuality education, age appropriate, that empowers a young person with life giving power to make their own autonomous decisions about their own bodies. The coalition also supports the rights to bodily integrity, which means an end to child marriages and an end to female genital mutilation. Because when women and girls are able to make informed choices about their bodies, their health and their future personally improves. But that's also true for realizing the potential of families, communities, and nations. And it enables all of us to harness our potential. So I hope that we will leave here and stand united, and that we will nurture this growing global movement. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Asante ni sana. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, everyone, and welcome to this event. My body is my own. Thank you so much for your words, Dr. Natalia Ekanem. It is always a pleasure to hear you speak and reinforce the importance for the fight of gender equality and how that takes so many different colors. So brought to you by UNFPA, the Center for Reproductive Rights, Plan International, and the Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Rights. My name is Dr. Charlie Acosta. My pronouns are he, she, and they, and I welcome you to this event today. During this year, we have talked a lot in the Action Coalition for Body Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive health and how to bring the importance of bodily autonomy to a spotlight. And we have worked very intensely, not only because it is a right, but because we believe in that inclusive framework and that sovereign bodies can create a true impact in this world and make a change. Please interact with us while we embark in this discussion through the discussion poll that will be appearing on the screen. And we have also collected youth perspectives that I will be sharing with you along the moderation of this panel. Joining me, we have incredible perspectives coming to the panel, and we hope to promote an in-depth discussion that awaits us in the near and long future regarding body autonomy. So I want to join and introduce to every single panelist that is going to be with us today. We have Ichel Maria Lucas. She is a 22-year-old Guatemalan Mayan Iche, young woman, and a physical occupational therapist, a student with a bachelor degrees in physical therapy. She was born and raised in the hustle and bustle of Guatemala City, but due to insecurity, her family migrated to the interior country, and from a young age, she has confronted a lot of cultural stereotypes that impede integral development of young girls. Who you saw and speak before is Dr. Natalia Kanem, who's the United Nations Secretary General and Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund, appointed by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez in 2017. And Dr. Kanem has more than 30 years of strategic leadership experience in the fields of preventive medicine, public and reproductive health, social justice, and philanthropy. Accompanying us as well is Enid Mutoni, and Enid is a senior vice president of the Global Legal Program at the Center for Reproductive Rights, a Kenyan national, and Enid has more than 20 years of experience in the fields of law, development, human rights, gender, and women's rights, working with International Development Law Organization, UNFPA, and others. And we also have Janine Alm Erickson, who is the State Secretary to the Minister of International Development Cooperation, overseeing Sweden's policy for global development and the development cooperation components of the Swedish feminist foreign policy. And Janine was also a group leader of the Green Party in Riksdag, member of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, and Gender Equality Policy spokesperson. So we have a lot of really important and great talent that is going to speak with us today. We're so excited to have you here with us. I hope that you're feeling well and that Zoom life and everything that's going on right now with the world does not stop us from sharing and from gaining very interesting insights on today. So I'm going to I'm going to open the first question of this panel to be, what does body autonomy mean to you? Maybe if we can start with Janine. Janine, tell us, what does body autonomy mean? What does it mean to you? Maybe in your previous work, can you tell us more a little bit about yourself and how do you think about this question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. For me, bodily autonomy means that to ensure that women, girls, and adolescents can decide over our own bodies. Every person, regardless of their gender identity, have the same right to contribute to society and to shape their own lives. I mean, this is not only a fundamental matter of human rights and an imperative for improving their mental and physical health. It is also a precondition for enabling them to shape their futures, participate in democratic processes, economic activities, and development at large. The 2030 Agenda can only be fulfilled when every single person can fully enjoy their sexual and reproductive health and rights.
Thank you so much. Yes, it is absolutely important that we look into the future. How about Ichel? Ichel, can you tell us, what does body autonomy mean to you coming from Latin America? We have a connection issue. Let us move with Enid, and then we might come back to Ichel. Enid, can you tell us what does bodily autonomy mean to you?
Thank you very much, Charlie. Just to add on what has already been mentioned, for me, bodily autonomy means agency, freedom, and rights to make decisions about one's own body. For me, it makes a special and direct connection between bodily autonomy and life outcomes that contribute to gender equality generally, including the ability to, for example, complete an education, which impacts one's economic outcomes, but also social empowerment. For a girl like me who grew up in a remote community in Kenya, and who saw classmates whose life were curtailed by getting pregnant and dropping out of school. For me, I think that bodily autonomy means when we get services, when we delay a pregnancy or we prevent a pregnancy, that is an education safeguarded. And for me, that meant I could go ahead and have a career. I could go to law school. And today, I can be the senior vice president of a global organization. Without bodily autonomy, many women and girls in this world cannot do that. So that is what bodily autonomy means to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I can relate to so many things regarding how I, for example, as a person from the LGBTQ plus society, has also found like those interactions within the system and the services and how difficult it is. Ichel, are you back with us? All right, it seems like we're having some connection issues, so we'll circle back to Ichel as soon as she's able to join again. So I'm going to follow to the next question. Now that we have defined a little bit better what body autonomy means and how it might interact with in certain levels, let's get into what are the limitations. When we talked and we already pointed out that there are some barriers to accessing body autonomy or expressing body autonomy. What are limitations that you face in relation to body autonomy? What are limitations that you have tried to address through your activism or other advocacy work with young women, adolescents, and girls? So we can start with Janine.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the limitations are many, as said here too, and the will to stop each and everyone to have bodily autonomy are obviously felt also by many. I mean, we are witnessing systematic attacks against SRHR and gender equality. It's undermining not only the normative frameworks, but challenging hard-won gains and jeopardizing the safety and security of adolescents, young women and girls everywhere. On top of this, as we all know, COVID-19 has laid bare critical gaps in equality, especially gender equality, and significantly compromised access to SRHR services. I mean, it's affecting millions of women and girls, particularly those who are the most marginalized. The burden on healthcare system has led to reprioritization of resources, and the availability of SRHR services has been compromised, with a devastating increase in child and maternity mortality as a result. Access to modern contraceptives, comprehensive sexuality education, and safe and legal abortion have declined in this crisis. But we must continue to emphasize SRHR for all, not least for young women, adolescents, and girls. And the Swedish engagement is based on a human rights principle, such as non-discrimination and participation. Important elements include access to quality, comprehensive sexuality education and safe and legal abortion. And through SIDA, Sweden supports multiple initiatives to ensure access to SRHR from a life course perspective. And this means that we recognize the unique needs of different groups of people at different stages of life. And when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and rights, adolescents is a particularly important group. The services must be responsive to adolescent needs and ability to seek service, and every child should have access to comprehensive sexuality education. And the Sweden's support to organizations includes dedicated efforts to reach these young adolescents and provide indirect support to youth leads organizations to be just the drivers of change in the communities where they live.
Thank you so much, Janine. That is so many important points that you talked like about building community and how in many ways like right the aspect of that is so important as a nurturing environment like for body autonomy to happen. Ichel is with us, I assume. Hola Ichel, hello, can you hear us?
This is the English interpreter. There is no sound feed. This is the English interpreter speaking. We are not able to hear the speaker.
Okay, seems like we're facing technical difficulties. Are you able to unmute yourself? Pues, ¿está tu micrófono activado?
Are you sure that your microphone is active? Try unmuting.
Yes? Okay. Can you hear me though? Okay, we're not able to hear you, Ichel. If someone from technical support could help us like solve the situation. I'm going to circle back then to Enid with the second question, and then we'll go back to Ichel. Enid, what limitations do you see facing in relation to body autonomy, and how can you like talk to us like from your experience in the movement?
Thank you, Charlie. Just building on what Janine has talked about, at the Center for Reproductive Rights, we focus on legal and policy barriers that adolescents and young women face in accessing sexual reproductive health and rights. And when we focus on laws and policies, I'll mention 4 specific ones that we find, very, very common. The first one is that we know that there are in many countries laws and policies that expressly deny access to girls and young women in accessing sexual reproductive health and rights and information. Secondly, there are laws that require parental and judicial authorization for young girls and young women to access very, very essential life-saving services. And the third one, there's many laws that criminalize, consensual, non-exploitative sexual conduct amongst adolescents. And finally, many laws exist in books that bar the provision of comprehensive sexuality education, as Janine has mentioned. I'll just provide a few details. We know that, for example, the laws that are in books that bar adolescents and young women and girls from accessing services are actually based on a need to protect girls and safeguard their morality. But these laws are, in fact, not in consonance with international human rights law that require that evolving capacities of young girls, young women, and adolescents should be recognized so that they can be able to access age-appropriate information and services that they so require to make decisions. Secondly, we have seen that when you require adolescents and young women and young girls to get parental authorization for services, in fact, they will forego the services, but we know that does not mean that they will not engage in sexual activity. And statistics speak for themselves. WHO has estimated that 21 million girls between the age of 15 and 19 get pregnant every year in developing regions. Of those, 12 million are going to give birth. Imagine that is almost the population of Moscow or Bangalore that we are talking about. And we also know that 777,000 births occur to adolescents under the age of 15 years. So definitely, the young girls are going to engage in sexual activities, and those laws that require them to get, authorization just simply exacerbate the problem. On laws that, require that adolescents criminalize, consensual, non-exploitative sexual behavior amongst adolescents, it sends a message that this is criminal. But further, for service providers like pharmacists and doctors, they will shy from giving that information and services in case they are seen to be, supporting an illegality. And finally, we've seen that it has been proven that providing comprehensive sexuality information is critical for, to get information that is very key for bodily autonomy and to make decisions. And we know, as the center, we have seen that it is in fact the girls who suffer multiple vulnerabilities. For example, girls with disability, girls from very poor communities, girls from migrant families that are impacted more severely by these limitations. And in fact, we have seen, cases where girls get coerced or are forced to get, to access services, including forced sterilization because of these vulnerabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think like there's so many points to highlight here, and I just want to kind of like bring perspectives like from responses that we have received like over Twitter, social media about like some of the questions that I've asked before. So we have actually like a lot of interesting participants like giving their opinions. For example, how timely access to healthcare and freedom from gender norms in clothing that allows to create and inhabit a trans body, and how important is that? And this was from Dr. Pip Gardner. How, for example, Manoj is telling us that freedom, expression, and acceptance are key elements in order to bring bodily autonomy. From Malta, they're saying that there is a blanket ban on abortion. You can face up to 3 years in jail doing or assisting abortions. And we also have a testimony from Gina saying that I have uterine fibroids and ovarian cysts. Menstruation was hell for me every month. I begged my female gynecologist to give me a hysterectomy and was told that I may meet someone that wanted kids. I was 46 and have never wanted to be a mother. I ended up with an IUD, and now I'm 51 dealing with ovarian torsion. So there are so many stories out there of how people have led with bodily autonomy, and so many points that from what Janine and the other panelists have told us, it's so important kind of like to start transmitting education in a very comprehensive way, introducing evidence-based tactics and initiatives that allow communities to heal and to join each other within this journey. I wanted to check for last time if Ichel is with us and if she's able to hear us. Ichel, ¿nos escuchas?
Are you able to hear us, Ichel?
All right, can you speak?
Hello.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Ichel, can you tell us, for example, what is your perception on bodily autonomy, and what limitations do you feel, or have you felt in relation to bodily autonomy within your activism and advocacy work?
Thank you. A pleasure to be here with you. For me, bodily autonomy is the freedom to make decisions about our own bodies. In terms of barriers and limitations, remember that this covers all internal and external decisions with ourselves. And in Guatemala, it's a country which is very multicultural, and there are 23 different language communities and 4 major nations of peoples with their own visions, principles, values, and on top of that, there is a deep-rooted patriarchal machismo and stigmatization of women, and it manifests in so many different ways, and it means that there is a lack of trust, even among women, of us as adolescent girls. We have it from the time we're born. We have stereotypes imposed upon us, and there are cases in which the girls are clearly discriminated against just because they were born female. In other words, being a girl is a disadvantage, and so obviously our bodily choices are limited, and with the crisis of identity that we're going through, and we as adolescents are always criticized. If we go and get piercing or tattoos, we are shunned, and from a very early age we are pushed to conform. We have very limited access to contraceptives, and we don't necessarily have access to CSE either. If we ever, as girls, act, out of a lack of information, or if we act out of the ordinary, then we're stigmatized. So I'm part of a network, and all of these patriarchal notions and the lack of information has pushed us to try to promote training and education and prevention of violence in various different events and initiatives. So it's time for people to speak out. It's up to our leaders to provide information, and so we're lobbying health authorities, municipalities, educations, and even parents to provide that information to young girls. We also run campaigns against violence, against discrimination, and particularly in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, this has been very, very wide. We have with a Chihonik program, which would be translated in the Piche Maya language. And here we're talking a lot about preventing violence through various initiatives. And we also work on mental health. And a few months ago, we did actually manage to have a counseling unit opened for adolescent girls and young women. And currently, we're working. This was a few months ago, and currently we're working on psychological prevention.
Thank you so much for that responses. It was great to hear you. I want to now, just because we're short on time, I want to move real quick to the next question. What actions do you think that are important or that should be included for to promote bodily autonomy of adolescents, young people, and girls? And what measures would you like to be taken? Let's start with Janine, if you can take a quick response.
Thanks. Well, Sweden is one of the strongest political supporters and largest financial contributor to the sexual, reproductive, and rights agenda globally. And currently, this is one of the 3 areas that Sweden offers particular attention under the umbrella of our feminist foreign policy, along with women's and girls' economic empowerment and rights, and the Women, Peace and Security agenda. But to achieve the ambitious goals on body autonomy set out in the Generation Equality Forum in Mexico, we need to work together to speed up implementation. We need more, not fewer, SRHR intervention that safeguard women's, girls, and adolescents' rights to their own bodies and lives, including access to safe and legal abortions. To do this, we must find sustainable and innovative financing mechanisms while mobilizing and securing financial support for SRHR. We must visualize safe abortion progress, or lack thereof, through data collection and research. We need working with multiple partners and at all levels, and we must aim at transforming gender and social norms, promoting gender equality, and applying an intersectional, intercultural, human rights-based approach to improve SRHR outcomes, and leaving no one behind. We also need to equip young people with the knowledge needed to make healthy and informed choices about sex and relationships. Comprehensive sexuality education is crucial. It saves lives and promotes gender equality. And in order to achieve gender equality and to work successfully with SRHR, we also need the commitments of all men and boys to be engaged, show solidarity, and participate in the struggle and process of change. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, we need to include the youth, young women and girls, such as many of yourselves, meaningfully. And for this reason, I am truly happy to be part of this event today, providing such a fruitful space for intergenerational dialogue. And Sweden stands behind all 4 priority areas identified under the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR, and have launched commitments in line with this agenda. And for that, I'm a very proud Swede. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anit, what can you tell us about what are the actions that you would like to see? If you can shortly just tell us in 1 minute, what do you think could happen in the future?
Thank you very much. Yes, to save on time, for the Center for Reproductive Rights, our focus will continue to be on ensuring that laws and policies to enable, bodily autonomy and access to information and services for adolescents, young women and men. But more specifically, what we are already doing is that we are engaging at the global level with regional human rights mechanisms to ensure that norms and standards that are being developed actually do recognize and respect the evolving capacities of adolescents and young women and girls to make decisions, to access services, to be able to, to live a fulfilled life. Secondly, we are spearheading with our national partners in different countries legal and policy reform to ensure that the inconsistencies that exist that are disaligned with international human rights provisions, are addressed. For example, in Kenya, we are working with our partner, FIDA Kenya, to call for the amendment of the Sexual Offences Act that has seen, young boys be imprisoned for up to 20 years for consensual and non-exploitative sexual conduct. And thirdly, just to add on to what Janine has talked about, we are pushing to have laws that do enable provision of comprehensive sexuality education, because that information enables girls and young women to make informed decisions. And of course, for us, ensuring that no one is left behind is to be very particular about ensuring that girls and young women and women who face multiple vulnerabilities remain a key focus. So most of our clients actually come from that class of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And last, we have Ichel. Ichel, can you tell us what are the actions that you require in the future? You have 1 more minute.
Well, that governments fulfill the pledges that they signed through the various international conventions, that they honor those commitments, that it's important for those to be followed up with action, and that they modify laws, that they make sure that holistic policies are put in place, and ministries of health, education, and social development need to work in a coordinated manner to provide the information and services that adolescent girls require when it comes to bodily autonomy. Because there are so many of them, like myself, who grew up without having ever even heard of bodily autonomy. It's important for all of those people who are on the front line when it comes to all of the different services offering protection of young adolescent girls and young women, that there be no discrimination, that they need to direct them towards support networks. And in my network, Las Niñas Lideran in Guatemala, we are trying to give voice to those young adolescents, and we support alliances so that the successful programs and models be rolled out and replicated where they could be useful. And it's important for governments to back up with commitments. Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you so much. We now have some time for Q&A, so I'm accepting questions if you have within the chat that our panelists might be interested in responding. Please send them up. I wanted to put a quick poll as well. Poll number 2, do you feel personally included in the actions taken by your government in defense of bodily autonomy? And while you type your questions in, I'll definitely look into them. If you can please like answer to the poll, that would be like really great. Just in their final 5 minutes like for this session. All right, so I see one question coming in. So I think it was referred to Enid. Enid, if you can tell us a little bit more about like what you spoke about, like governments or there being like a parent approval in order to be able to express your sexual and reproductive rights. What can you tell us more about this? Like, how does it affect other types of girls, for example, in rural areas?
Thank you, Charlie. Just so for example, let's take services like accessing contraception, or even services like just information on where to get services, as Liche talked about. What we've seen is that when there are laws that say that adolescents or young people cannot be given these services unless they are accompanied by an adult. In most cases, we know in most cultures where we are working that parents don't even talk to their adolescents and young people about sexuality or even about sex, and most of them don't even want to imagine that their children are actually even having sex or even needing those services and information. So most of the time we've seen actually girls preferring sometimes to use another girl who is slightly older than them to go to accompany them. It is in very few cases that they will approach a parent. And what this means is that they'll turn up at a pharmacy, or they'll turn up for even services like sometimes like even abortion, where it is actually guaranteed, like in cases of sexual violence, that they have no one to accompany them to get those services. And girls like that are forced to carry pregnancies to term, or when they try to access services, they and the service provider, like the doctors and pharmacists, as we've seen in one case in Kenya, they are arrested and prosecuted for illegality. So in essence, this affects not just contraception. It affects things like even girls who have HIV and AIDS infection, girls who've suffered sexual violence. That a lot of times they cannot access services because of that presumption that they cannot consent, and we don't have policies and laws or even communities engagement that enables parents to start having those conversations with their children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anid. I think the next question is for Janine. Janine, as a representative from the government, like what do you think the government structures can do to address systems of oppression that does not allow people to express their bodily autonomy appropriately on a day-to-day life? I guess this comes from an LGBTQ plus background in terms of like how can the government be a place of support in terms of addressing these oppression structures?
Well, the government, as well as every other part of society, has to be very clear on what the intentions are and what the human rights are, and that this is a part of that and a very important integral part of that. When we speak about the LGBT plus community or gender equality or whatever, where people are oppressed and not be able to express themselves and be who they are and love who they want, there has to be a voice loud. And except for being a voice and talking about this thing, putting pressure, we also try to support in every way we can organizations, communities, and to give a sensation and a feeling of that they are not alone, that we are here to fight with them, and that we will continue to do so, be it gender equality or LGBTQI rights.
Thank you so much. And I guess this one goes either for Dr. Kanem if you want to pitch in, or Janine as well. What can we do in terms of support, like structurally or financially, youth-led movements that are wanting to enter and enhance this bodily autonomy space? Like, how do you think like the youth-led movements can collaborate with either governments or the UNFPA, like in order to achieve this?
Well, Dr. Charlie, I'm happy to start by saying that it's very important for young people to express the fact that you are ready. You're ready to lead. This is the case in so many instances. And the sharing of the budget is part of the sharing of the power. Young people, I find, are very responsible with money. They are accountable to each other in a much more transparent way. And so I think that it's a great idea to invest directly in youth-led organizations. I also think that it's very important for young people to prepare themselves by understanding and analyzing the flows of money that relate to all of the issues that have been discussed today. So educate yourself about how the parliament in your country allocates that budget, and make sure that that your voice is heard. Moreover, as part of generation equality, we in the United Nations have vowed, under the leadership of our Secretary General, to examine what more we can do to support grassroots organizations directly. UNFPA has experimented with this in a bigger way for women-led organizations, but I do think it's time to invest more directly in youth-led organizations as well. I'd like to thank Ixchel from Las Niñas Lideran. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you
Everything that she
so
put on the
much.
table was really, really educational for us. So thanks, Charlie. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Jenny, would you like to pitch in on that? Oh, here we are seeing.
What?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes,
Go ahead. Sorry.
just that youth organizations are part of civil society, and civil society is very important for the democratic systems everywhere, and also for more people to get their voices heard and to make change. So this is part of a bigger system, and we often say that the youth is our future, but it's also here and now, and it is important that we all are a powerful force together in enhancing these issues.
Thank you so much. I think there was the poll that we asked to the audience, if we can bring back that to the screen. So here, are we seeing that so the question that we were able to ask is if you were feeling represented by your government in terms of like the actions of bodily autonomy. I'm not able to discernate if someone can help me with it between the green and the blue, but I wanted to start closing this panel by bringing some perspectives from outside right now that people are commenting. So Robin says that body autonomy means having access to choices to maintain healthy physical and mental life. And I do believe that resonates a lot with what we are saying, that it's not only about rights, it's not only being about participation, it is also about what can we do in order to bring those voices to participate meaningfully, to be the askers of solutions and put them in the proposition and put them in participation, right? Whether that includes funding, whether that includes drastically changing those systems that have chronically oppressed them. Like, those are very interesting like perspectives that we can for sure be better at, and we hope that we can include everyone that is listening to us right now in that movement. So in order, I really would like to close this space by, well, first thanking all of our amazing panelists, but also leaving you all with this quote also from one of our participants today. Her name is Haley. So it says that body is a domain, and a domain that's no one else's, and I will decide its future because I'm responsible and I'm powerful enough to do so. And this resonates so much with absolutely everything it has said here today. I thank you all for your participation. To all our audience, keep the fight, keep fighting, because it's worth fighting, and we will see the results at the end. And I'll be there, and we'll all meet you there. Thank you so much. My name again was Dr. Charlie Acosta. Thank you so much for every single panelist for joining us today. I wish you the best for this Gender Equality Forum in Paris, and see you the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.